Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today we are breaking down the UFC Louisville card. We're just gonna get right into it. So for the first fight we have Rayanne Amanda, also she is Rayanne Dos Santos, so I'm not quite sure which one she's going with. But she is fighting Puja Tumar. This is Tumar's debut, so I'm not quite familiar with her. Same thing Rayanne Dos Santos, or Rayanne Amanda. But Tumar has won every single fight except for her fight with Stamp Fairtex, who is a phenomenal female fighter. That was 4.5 years ago. She's won every single fight since then by finish, at least in the last 2 years she has. And Rayanne Amanda has lost her UFC debut and she lost her Contender Series fight. So she's been good on the regional scenes, but whenever it comes to the UFC stage, she just underperforms, which is why I'm picking Tumar to win. And if you bet, it's definitely the better option considering she is the underdog right now at plus 195. And I think Tumar will win by knockout in the second or the third round. Next up, we have Cody the Spartan Stamen versus Taylor Lapilus. I'm picking Cody Stamen by decision. It could be by knockout, but decision's definitely the safer option. And if you bet, Stamen is definitely a good option. He is a slight underdog at plus 175. Both guys are very accurate. Their significant strikes are above 50%. Stamen is around 55%. And Stamen lands way more takedowns, which is always good. Same height, similar weight. However, Taylor Lapilus has a 73-inch reach. Cody Stamen only has a 64.5-inch reach. So there is a big discrepancy there. But I think Cody Stamen is going to win this one. But I think that it's going to be a pretty good fight. Next up, we have Denise Gomez versus Warda Mora. Warda is extremely accurate on the feet. She has a 71% significant strike accuracy rating, which is very high. She has 100% takedown accuracy as well. She is 10-0. Denise Gomez is 8-3. She's only hitting at a 55% accuracy rating, which isn't bad, but it's not great either. However, Warda is 30 years old. Denise Gomez is still 24 years old, so she could definitely improve immensely in between camps. Denise Gomez did lose her last fight against Angela Hill. But she did have a huge win over Yasmin Uruguay, who I thought was going to be next contender, but she got fraud checked very early. She also beat Bruna Brazil. She also beat Rayanne Amanda, who was fighting on the first fight on this card. And Edwara Morna. This will be her second UFC fight. She also has a ton of finishes on her record, which is why I'm picking her by submission in the third round. I think that this will be a pretty decent MMA fight, but it's definitely up in the air on who is going to win. Next up, we have Daniel Marcos versus John Castaneda, also known as Sexy Mexi, according to Tapology, but yeah, I'm not going to call him that. Marcos is 15-0. His last fight was a no contest due to an accidental groin strike. That was just 3 months ago, so he has been very active. He got signed to the UFC less than 2 years ago, and this will be his fourth fight. Meanwhile, Castaneda has been signed to the promotion for quite a while now. This will be his third fight in 1 year as well, so he's been relatively active as well. But I think Marcos is going to win this fight by decision. I think that it's going to be a very fun fight. I think that Castaneda does have an opportunity to give Marcos his first loss, but I think the safer option betting-wise is definitely Marcos. But the odds are near even, so I would honestly kind of stray away from betting on this one. And their stats are pretty even as well, both slightly above 50% accuracy. But Marcos has a 50% takedown accuracy, which is pretty decent. So I think that if he mixes it up and really tests Castaneda's ground game as well as his striking, I think that you get a fairly easy decision. Next up, we have Andrea Lee versus Montana De La Rosa. Not sure why this fight is so high up on the prelims, considering neither woman has won in the last 2 years. Andrea Lee's last win was 2.5 years ago against Cynthia Calvillo. And De La Rosa's last win was against Ariane Lipsky. That was almost 3 years ago. But yeah, I think Andrea Lee could win this fight, but yeah, I'm not sure who to pick. Neither woman is very good, to be honest. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say De La Rosa will win by decision. And I would honestly stay away from betting on this one, considering neither girl has been consistent, unless you count losing as being consistent. Next up, we have a gigantic favorite, the biggest favorite on the card, to be honest. Brad Katona versus Jesse Butler. Brad Katona is 13-3. Jesse Butler is 12-5. But the betting odds are minus 500 for Brad Katona. Jesse Butler is a plus 380 underdog. And I think that Brad Katona is the favorite for a reason. Other than his last fight against Garrett Armfield, he has been extremely consistent. He's just not a very exciting fighter to watch. And I also think that Katona will win by decision or submission in the third round. Jesse Butler's accuracy is horrendous, 14%. Meanwhile, Brad Katona is around 55%. So yeah, I think Brad Katona is going to walk right through Jesse Butler. Next up, we have a pretty fun fight against Carlos Prates versus Charles Radke. I'm a big Radke fan. He hits very hard. Not afraid to grapple as well. He's hitting at just under 60% for accuracy. Same thing with Paredes. Both guys are landing around 4 strikes per minute, which is decent, I guess. But I think Charles Radke's going to hit him much harder and put him down, finish via ground and pound. I think that'll happen either in the first round or the second round. And if you bet, definitely bet on Radke. He's the slight underdog right now. Next up, we have Thiago Moises versus Ludovic Klein. This is honestly kind of a toss-up fight. The odds are minus 135 for Klein, and Moises is plus 115, so it's pretty even as far as betting goes, but I think Klein is going to get it done by knockout in the second or the third round. Thiago Moises is a very tough fighter, but every time he gets a step up in competition, he loses. And I think Klein is just that next level up. I got Klein winning by knockout in the second round. Next up, we got Puna Soriano versus Miguel Beza. Neither guy has won very much. Puna has lost to Stoltfus, Kopylov, Maximov, and Brendan Allen. So, yeah, not great. His only 4 losses have been in his last 5 fights. And Beza lost to Andre Fiallo, Leos Williams, Santiago Ponzinibbio. So very similar story. He hasn't won a fight in 3.5 years against Takashi Sato, so it's definitely not looking good for him. I'm honestly not sure who to pick in this fight, but I'm leaning towards Soriano. He's fought in a lot tougher competition, but Bieza really hasn't. He fought Matt Brown 4 years ago, and I think that this fight will be pretty fun. Both guys aren't afraid to trade on the feet, and I think that Soriano is going to knock him out in the second or the third round. Next up, we have Julian Marquez, biggest bag fumbler in the UFC, versus Zach Reese. Julian Marquez has had a very up and down record. His last win was 3 years ago against Sam Alvey, so that's really not very good. He lost to G-Rod and Marc-Andre Barriant. Zach Reese lost his UFC debut against Cody Brundage. He got body slammed, then followed up with punches, which is never very good. Right now, the odds are near even, but I'm picking Julian Marquez to win this fight. He's much more experienced. He's fought in the tougher competition as well, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Zach Reese get his first win in the UFC. But I think right now, Marquez is the safer option, so I'm picking him by knockout in the second round. Next up, we have Bruno Ferreira versus Dustin Stoltfus. Bruno is 11-1. Stoltfus is 15-5. So I think it's pretty obvious who I am picking in this one. I think Bruno Ferreira is just much stronger, the much heavier hitter, and he's the better grappler as well, in my opinion. He flatlined Phil Hawes 4 months ago. He did get knocked out by Nursultan Ruzaboev, but he beat G-Rod in his UFC debut, so that's a huge win. And Stoltfus really hasn't beaten anybody good. He beat Soriano, but as I said, Soriano's kind of not great. And he did lose to Abus Magomedov. He also lost to Gerald Mearshart and Rodolfo Vieira. So, yeah. I think Bruno Ferreira is going to knock him out in the second round, if not the first round. Next up, we have the Young Bucks fighting Ricky Turcios and Raul Rosas Jr. I think Raul Rosas Jr. is going to get Ricky Turcios out of here. I think he's going to submit him in the first or the second round. Raul mostly needs to work on his stand-up and his cardio. Pretty Ricky is very herky-jerky, very spazzy, I guess you could say. But I think Raul Rosas Jr. is going to get him down early, tire him out, and then eventually find the submission. And Rosas is still only 19 years old, so I think he's going to improve leaps and bounds. And Ricky Turcios is 31 years old. I don't think he's going to improve too much. Next up, we have Dominic Reyes versus Dustin Jacoby. I want Dominic Reyes to win, but his chin is gone. Plus, he's 34 years old, so that chin's not going to recover the same. Dustin Jacoby is 36 years old, but he hasn't been knocked out nearly as much as Reyes has. However, Jacoby has lost to some lackluster competition outside of Khalil Roundtree Jr. That was a split decision as well, so it was a close fight. And he did expose Kennedy and Jaquanu, which is huge for him. But he did lose to Alonzo Menefield as well. He was a decent fighter, but skill for skill, Dominic Reyes is a much better fighter. And I think Jacoby's going to knock Dominic Reyes out, unfortunately, in the second round. But I do want Reyes to win. He is the much more skilled fighter, but once you hit him clean, he's on wobbly legs, and yeah, wouldn't be surprised to see him get knocked out again. Next up, we have the main event with Jared Cannonier and Nasruddin Imavov. Definitely leaning towards Jared Cannonier. He's a very heavy hitter, has insane cardio. And Nasruddin Imavov lost to Sean Strickland, and Jared Cannonier beat the brakes off of Sean Strickland. He didn't knock him out. It was a close fight, but Sean Strickland really exposed Imavov, and Jared Cannonier did much better against him, so that's really kind of what I'm going off of. Plus, Jared Cannonier has fought in much tougher competition, and outside of his Israel Adesanya fight, he's been taking nothing but W's. But Imavov has had a bunch of very good wins against Edmund Shabazian, Jaquan Buckley, fought Chris Curtis to a no contest due to a clash of heads. Then he absolutely ran through Roman Dolidze. Jared Cannonier beat the brakes off of Kelvin Gastelum, knocked out Derek Brunson, beat Sean Strickland obviously, and he beat the brakes off of Marvin Vettori. If you haven't seen that fight, I highly recommend rewatching it. It's amazing that Marvin did not get knocked out. Same thing with Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland got tagged a lot, but not nearly as bad as Marvin Vettori did. I'm still amazed at Marvin's chin, to be honest. Jared Cannonier is 40 years old, so the decline has to happen at some point, and this honestly might be the fight against Nasruddin. Nasruddin's 28 years old, so you could definitely see him continue to improve, but yeah, right now I think the safer option is Jared Cannonier. The odds are pretty even, so I wouldn't really bet on this fight, but yeah, if you guys like the content, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you guys have a great week.